This is the Max Yao Leadership Podcast.
But sometimes people say, I can't talk about it, or just let me vent for a second. And I've had men 3 times my size cry. What do you do in that situation? You know, Max, sometimes you're going to catch people on a bad day, or they just got off a terrible phone call and then all of a sudden you're calling. And so what I try to do is, and if you focus on that, now you have a real call.
Hi, Richard. Welcome to the Max Yao Leadership Podcast.
Max, I'm so happy to be with you and your audience today. Thank you very much for having me as a guest.
No, thank you. The honor is for us, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us today. I look forward to the conversation. And maybe to get started, anyone listening to us today, why do they need to stop whatever they are doing to listen to this conversation? And what's your unique message that you want to share today?
I definitely think they might need a slight break of their hamster wheel job that they're doing. Sit back and hang out with Max and Richie, hear a couple fun things, smile a bit, and then get back to your grind. That's definitely why they should be on your podcast listening right now.
Excellent. Yeah, we definitely need some of that time out, absolutely. And would you mind introducing yourself a bit more for our audience, telling us a bit about your background and who is Richie?
Of course, Max. My name is Richard Blank. I am the proud CEO of Costa Rica's call center. Originally from Northeast Philadelphia, decided to follow a dream and be a language major in college. Doubled down on that and moved to Costa Rica at 27 and worked at my friend's center for 4 years to learn the business. And then 17 years ago, I threw my hat in the ring, started my own call center, and now we're at 150 strong. So it's been a long shot that hit, and fortunately, my stars were aligned, Max.
Wow, excellent. So that's quite impressive. Moving to a new country, starting entrepreneurial journey. What made you decide to move from your homeland all the way, saying on the same continent, but quite different sceneries?
Never really expected it. It was just a 1 in a million opportunity. But Max, it was built on momentum. When I was a little boy, I used to pick up Spanish vocabulary because I found it interesting. And then I got positive reinforcement from the Latin community and additional vocab and grammar. And so it was a class that came easy to me. It was something I was passionate about. None of my friends could compare because they were going into law, medicine, or some sort of family business. And then when it came down to me being 18 years old and choosing my career, I didn't know exactly what to put my finger on, but a second language was definitely in the mix. And so I convinced my parents to invest my college years in being a Spanish major, and then post-grad worked for the importers of Corona, so I was getting a return on investment of this second language. But then, my friend, an opportunity came, and I almost had to get past certain guilt from a family and expectations, be a little selfish, because I knew in my heart this was something I wasn't going to regret, and I was going into it with good intentions. And unfortunately, a lot of the people that love you want to protect you. So they will put a little buffer or filter there. They don't want you to go on a roller coaster because you might throw up. But what happens if you have the best time of your life? You become a little more bold and brave. And so I really needed to shed some skin of what I was used to in the United States and my environment with my friends and networking, and almost do it on my own. Unless, I tell you what, Max, I could have always gone back with my tail between my legs, learned my lesson, and got right back into the wheel. But I wanted to drink life a little bit. I wanted to be one of the adventurers that I read about as a child that would leave castles, slay dragons, and save princesses. I wanted a real adventure. And if it was something that needed to be made by myself because no one else was assisting, then so be it. But that's the way we do in this world.
Excellent. So you touched on your passion early in your formative years about Spanish.
Correct.
But what about entrepreneurial journey? What made you embrace that way of life? To be honest, it's not just work, but what made you decide to become an entrepreneur as opposed to working in the corporate environment?
A lot of the jobs that I chose weren't necessarily commission-based, but performance. So when I was raising money for my baseball little league team, think I sold the most candy bars. I knew how to knock on a door and present it. And then when I was a waiter, I guess I got good tips because I knew how to upsell. And in college, when I was volunteering my time, I was given opportunities because maybe I was a person that could deliver. And so a lot of the times you're seeing that you're producing, even though it's for somebody else, you're winning. And there's a certain time when you need for them to let go of your bike for a second to see if I can do it on my own. And what I tried to do was something exceptionally conservative, even though it's a very complicated and expensive industry. Instead of buying the server room, renting the building, buying the equipment, and all the bells and whistles, I was capable of starting my business from a turnkey station at a blended center, almost like an internet cafe. There's no privacy and your ego's out the window, but at least you can scale accordingly, pay your taxes and make a little bit of a margin. But an entrepreneur for me, I was in my mid-30s, max, and time was a ticking, and I didn't really have that much in savings. And I knew I didn't have that much more time in a career to be able to max it out, no pun intended. And also, being a healthy young man, it's really a young man's game to do a grind. And maybe when you get a little bit of a fire underneath you, it forces you to do something. And also I was almost pushed into it. You know, I could always work in a family business, but by not doing it, I was forced to swim on my own. And so I needed to do it for my own self-respect. Even if I failed miserably, I could look in the mirror and realize I at least put a chip on the table. But fortunately for me, Max, my man, this run didn't end. I don't know how it happened, but I started with one seat for 1 week, and it grew up to 150 full-time agents with clients that have been with me over a decade. And so it makes you humble. You count your lucky stars. And you realize that if I didn't have the fidelity to do it all these years, I would have burnt out a long time ago. So I chose a luxury trade built on rhetoric and using the infrastructure of a call center with the technology, the recordings, and the computers, where through that medium I could earn a living. But the candy and the juice of this industry is doing the soft skills training downstairs, or walking the rows, or seeing somebody where English is their second language crack some codes and start getting better in their self-confidence and their expansion in regards to their delivery and their arguments. It's a beautiful thing because these are certain soft skills and foundation that you will have for the rest of your life that will assist in maintaining relationships and making you very clever and approachable when you're meeting people for the first time. And so I've been very happy for what I've chosen, and it's done very well for me.
So why did you choose call center out of, there were certainly many ventures available to you. Why this in particular? And I want to hear a bit more about your journey going from that one seat for 1 week to 150 people strong today. Why did you choose this, and how did it happen?
It chose me, Max. When I was 27 years old in Scottsdale, Arizona, post-grad, sending out resumes through a fax machine, hoping I can get an interview somewhere in Tempe, a very good friend of mine from college said, "Why don't you come to Costa Rica? Have a call center. Why don't you teach English for a couple months and take a time out?" And you see a call center or a boiler room, what Hollywood does. They glamorize sports books, casino stocks, pharmacies, and sweepstakes. We don't do those things. And a lot of the people are artists of speech, but they're doing things with bad intentions. And so when I was here, it was only supposed to be for 60 days. But I realized I had a 1 in a million shot to learn this business from the inside out, not at sea level. So for those 4 years, I sat amongst Ticos, the Costa Ricans, hundreds of them. And I learned retention, customer support, onboarding, training, SEO, labor laws, you name it. So if you ever want to think that you might be earning less, but the knowledge is 10 times more as a future bet, I realized that every single day I was getting much smarter. And so you asked about the entrepreneurial spirit. My brother, if you are trained and you're ready to go, then step in the ring. I mean, how much more do you want to hit the bag and hit the weights? It's time. It's time. And I don't know how much more books I could read and mentors I could follow. Enough of this nonsense. It's my turn. And I did it the old school way. Yes, I hired professionals, the CTO, the attorneys, the accountants, human resources, security. I couldn't do that, didn't have the time. I needed people like that. But the foundation, the trunk of the Richard tree was there. The training, the motivation, the reinforcement, the balancing of what I learned all these years. And so I just incorporated that into the pie. And it worked perfectly. But this is a very interesting industry. Today, people are preferring omni-channel non-voice support, Max. They're looking at chat emails, and texting. And I believe in AI. I think it's great for gathering and moving things forward. But to put that ball into the goal, you really need that human touch. And my strongest argument, my friend, is that AI can never extend authentic empathy towards the client. They don't understand what happens if the puppy runs away or you get rained on, and they're not going to give you a hug because it's metal. It's not going to feel good. And it'd also be hypocritical, and you wouldn't like it. It's not real. You want that human touch. And so maybe my industry might be reduced by certain staff because other things can handle it, but we will have specialists. We will have concierges of speech that will retain this client, maybe get the real upsell and get a referral, or be very active in listening on why we lost them to our competitor and use that for our improvement if they are willing to take the time. And so what an interesting puzzle when you walk the rows and you see all these individuals that are engaged in their calls to prolong conversations, convert the call into a sale or an appointment. And so I think these are beautiful soft skills that people have, which makes them more advanced speakers.
Great. So you go down there, decide that you, after working with your friends, and you decide to set up your own call center. How did you go about convincing people to come work for you?
The bottom line is price. If I could match the entry-level rate of Amazon and the other large call centers plus pay their full benefits, they'll come in the door. Is it closer to their home? Is it closer to their university? Is it better for their schedule, for their balance in their life? Does a friend work there where they'd feel more comfortable? I couldn't compete with the giants. How do you compete against Amazon? They have every single billboard and bus, so many locations, thousands of agents, all the bells and the whistles times 5. Well, all I need is just a few. And if it just takes that one person that wants to be here, not to be lost amongst thousands in a number, but I really know the kid's name, and I listen to their calls, and I work with them to get them better. That's where you get it. As I mentioned before, I don't need to cattle call like they do, and attrition rate in call centers can be up to 300% depending. But if you are highly selective and you can choose the right people, they'll stay with you. And okay, you want to know one thing I do differently? I am a collector of antique pinball machines. So I got about 11 of them, as old as 70 up to 1994. And a lot of these agents never played that before, so it's a happy medium to let off steam, recharge batteries, make friends. I got an air hockey table. I got Pac-Man and fighting machines. Why? Because recesses was the best class. It's where you make your friends. And so maybe instead of just a ping pong table or the games they have at home, if 10 people are downstairs in the game room playing air hockey and pinball, chances are they might stay. And they might fall in love with one another, or they might do something to make them feel like this is a more community-oriented center than just something that's so large that you get lost and it's difficult to get promoted. There's too much competition. And so for me, don't you love the bed and breakfast or the smaller hotel or the smaller restaurant where you know the owner and the chef, and it's not like I need for them to give me free cappuccino and dessert, but it's like Cheers when Norm would walk in and everyone knew his name. Sometimes people want the home feel, someone that recognizes you and you know you're assisting the business while they're assisting you for a good time. And it just doesn't have to be cookie cutter and so large. People might want a painting instead of a print. And that's what we try to offer here.
Over the years, how would you say, so you described, creating that environment, warm feeling. What was you are in an industry where you interact with customers on behalf of your customers. And how do you manage to raise that customer satisfaction through the work that you do? Do you have any particular recipe that you teach your staff to create that customer satisfaction?
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you brought it up. The number one thing is you need to listen and stop telling them you're sorry. Because the more that they repeat, the more time you're wasting, frustration, and the call's going to end bad. And so there's a lot of the times you can repeat what they've said to do a checkpoint, put it to bed, confirm it, and move it forward. That works. You can use specific transitional sentences, letting you know, Max, that makes a lot of sense. Let me explain why. Or, Max, I'm so happy that you brought it up. Here are the 3 reasons why this will assist you. And so it just doesn't have to be a back and forth straight line. You can have curves with it. So there's easing in and easing out of the questioning to readjust the tone. A lot of the times you might let somebody vent. If they curse at you, Max, they get a warning. Second time you hang up. But if they're cursing in this direction, not in this direction, let them vent like a crying child. And then you'll ask them in my Philly guilt sort of way, Max, are you finished yet? And then you'll realize that you overextended yourself and you say, Richard, I apologize, or Chris. And I go, no problem. And then imagine that sort of relationship that you have with a client. You got real and raw for a second. You played it cool. No one yelled. And you can have a normal conversation like adults. And so the people need to find their balance. They need to pay attention in 30-second segments. They need to listen to the background to see if you hear a child, a dog, or any sort of thing that may distract or assist a call for anchoring in order to relate to people. It's not an art. It's just being in the now. And I'm not telling you anything people don't know. It's just certain manners that you had in front of your grandparents or when you're meeting someone of influence for the first time. People do not want canned answers. They don't want long sentences. I call that desert pitching. Like in a desert, there's no oasis. There's no rest and drink and recharge. And if you're so afraid that someone's going to hang up on you, then take it. Have a romantic death. Do excellent 30 seconds and let them hang up on you. But if you're doing the right thing, these phone calls get extended and your conversion ratios get better. Your metrics get better. And so I'm not going to teach you $1 million trick because tricks are for magicians and for kids. I want somebody to ethically have a foundation to where it could be the 1st minute, 7th minute, or the 23rd minute because it's a long call. You're consistent. It's like telling the truth. You can do the same thing over and over again. And I think those are the sort of forced marches or coming of age moments for an agent. And when they shed a skin, Max, they realize instead of selling, they were having a normal conversation with someone, and the guy that barked the loudest bought the most. When you thought the call was dead, you revived it. And the one that you thought was a gift turned out to be the worst call you ever had in your entire life. So I think a lot of it has to do with maturity and a little bit of dedicated practice, due diligence that assists you in giving you leverage and distance on calls. And these aren't tricks. It's just proper preparation, my friend, for these sort of interactions.
Absolutely, no, I absolutely agree. Now, one thing that I'm absolutely convinced, and this podcast is about leadership, because I believe that everything rises and falls on leadership. And for you to have been able to build such a great company away from home and creating that bond and culture in your organization, that takes great deal of very positive leadership. What's your definition of leadership?
Paying somebody on time. You earn that money, it's yours. That's number one. So at least that's their livelihood. That's their security and stability. Everything else is just smoke and mirrors. I just want to make sure I fulfill my end financially to somebody. All right? And secondly, I'd like to set an example. This is my wheelhouse. It's not like I just cut checks and I'm an administrator. I can get on these phone calls and match or exceed the work that's being done. And I can do it on a moment's notice. So they do realize that I have the sharpest sword here. And I earn this through merit and through rank. And it's something where you eventually need to be the head of the dojo. You've done it. And as I mentioned, I might not be thousands, but I'm 150 strong, 17 years in. And so I believe luxury of a track record speaks volumes. And so people that might be meeting me for the first time, maybe my reputation preceded myself. They might have read about me, seen a great podcast, drove by the building and wondered what the neon lights look like, or maybe just Googled my pinball collection. But I use my real name. It's not an alias. I am bilingual in their language compared to a lot of Anglo-Saxon business owners that speak some, but not fluently. And they come and they go. And so these are the little things, eventually, when you chip away from the competition and the shiny object, people like that sort of endurance. And especially when I speak to my clients, and you mentioned that earlier, the long shot, the kid that took the chance, moved to another country, a lot of people say, yeah, all right, I'll work with someone like that. Yeah, why not? And so a lot of it is action. I don't want to speak ahead of my words. I want my words to reflect what I've done. And it's weird because, there's no blueprint for this, and I didn't go to school for this. And there's ups and downs. But I tell you what, you judge somebody's character during chaos, and I never gave someone the walk of shame. I never pulled my hair out, even though I have no more hair. And it's kind of interesting. When there's the most chaos is when I can sow a heart and land a plane. I'm actually so calm during those times where I could think rationally. I try to relax everybody else so we can function accordingly. And also with my clients, no surprises. Good, bad, or ugly, you're going to hear from me. And also, I'm going to make a solution. Why? Because the good times are good times. But if I can show a certain sort of professionalism and manner during an issue, most professionals understand that. And they respect you for being very candid about how you're going to resolve the issue.
So I guess on a large team of 150 people serving multiple clients, you need to have leaders in place in your organization to take your message forward. What do you think we need to do to create that next generation of leaders? What should the business leaders, CEOs like yourself, entrepreneurs do to create that and nurture that next generation of leaders?
There is no prerequisite. As long as you're legal to work here, which is 18 years old, up to 99 years old, you could be promoted. And I want it on merit. Sure, I'm going to look at your numbers just to make sure you were able to do it on the phone. I need for you to receive the respect of your peers. It's the proletariat, not the aristocrat. Forget about me. I want the people that are around you to love you. And so when you do get promoted, you get congratulated compared to scalded upon. And so I wanted to make sure that it's done through merit. And this individual has earned their stripes. And so I love promoting from within. I'll bring in outside specialists very rarely, but I'll never put them in a team as a supervisor to run a campaign. If they are just starting here, they could be a cancer. They might not understand our culture. And I also look for small wins. Listen, Max, if you show up to work not only on time, but if you're a half an hour early, my man, what you doing here so early? You're just hanging out, getting ready. And then I look at your work, and besides doing your job, you're writing down 15 new vocabulary words that you never understood before just to expand your English. I'm proud of you. I think that's wonderful. And you're good with your coworkers, and I love that. If you can show me those small wins, then it's obvious that you might sit in on meetings. I might explain to you why I made a decision. I could potentially introduce you to other people in the account, the clients or other people, so you can see what to expect. And maybe just ask 2 or 3 questions to see if you're capable of handling the weight. And if you are, and you are capable, I'm more than happy to work with you. And I want you to make a ton of mistakes, because you'll never make them a second time. And then we could really mold you like a squire to a knight, Max, and really get you exactly where you need to be. But you need to make yourself vulnerable, my friend, in order for me to readjust and make you powerful.
Absolutely. I imagine that, I'm sure through that journey, when people are underperforming or situations arise, you have to have some difficult conversation with your team. As a leader, how do you handle difficult conversations?
You bend them, you don't break them, because I don't want you to quit. And also, do I have a track record with you? Are you a brand new agent and we're ramping up, or have you been with me for 5 years and you're just way off? How about this? I guarantee it's something that's happening outside of the office. Are you raising children, taking care of your parents, fighting with your wife? I don't know. But I tell you what, where I come from, Max, I can call the balls and the strikes. I've worked with you for 5 years already, so I'm going to have you come in the office, we're going to have some coffee, and then I'm going to say, hey, Max, you know you're better than this. Come on, last week you did 44. Today you're only doing 12. And secondly, you're out of character. When I walked past you this morning, you didn't even say good morning, Jefe. You've been doing it for 5 years straight. What's up today? You're here, your body's here, but your mind is elsewhere. Come on, buddy, and how good are you going to be on the phone today? You're missing your beat. Mrs. Jones, you got to repeat the same question 4 times. And then I don't pry, but sometimes people say I can't talk about it, or just let me vent for a second. And I've had men 3 times my size cry. What do you do in that situation? You respect the moment. You take them off the clock. You let them get it out. And once they get it out, and I tell you what, if you can bond with somebody where they share with you something about themselves, where it's so delicate that you could really manipulate it, or you can nurture it, those people are never going away. Because they will keep bringing up, hey man, when I was at my weakest, Max, you pulled me off the phone, brought me in the office, and let me I can't thank you enough. I was having the worst day. I could have almost quit. And so these are real human beings. I was on the phone, just like you, Max. We've all done sales. We're not robots, and we have emotion. And if you can find the right thing to reset somebody or to give them a second wind, that's what leadership is. And don't tell me you get it out of a book. No way. It's magic that happens at the moment. And if you don't catch it, it's gone. And leadership is being lucid enough to see it in the moment, or to have preventative measures so you don't have to cure it. And giving a second chance, even a third chance, because you and I have been given 3 chances before. Remember, we used to get in trouble. And maybe it's the real mentor that got that third chance to get it right. And I'm willing to do that. I have to do that because I see myself in them. And I hate when people are feeling weak and then scared of me that I'm going to do something about it. No, my man, you've been here for 5 years. You've earned it. It's not like you're getting a pass, but I'm definitely going to give you an ear. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you feel good, because I'm going to back you up on that. And guess what, buddy? It's not that one time a year on Valentine's Day when you're giving flowers. The real man gives flowers on that random day. I don't need to catch up. I've already done it. So we can have that real conversation and get there. It's not just that last minute emergency conversation where I'm calling you Billy when your name is Dave. I mean, come on. You shouldn't even have to get there. But if you get a surprise, then you cash in those 99 compliments you gave Max over the past 5 years. And then that one time you can get real. That's what leadership is. Taking off that tie, not even being a boss anymore, but speaking man to man, so this individual can have a good life and not let that spiral out of control.
Very good. When did you, in your early years, first felt that you had that leadership skills in you. And do you think that's something that you're born with or you develop into leadership?
If you let people take too much of advantage of you, that's not leadership. And if you're just a forceful leader, that's dictatorship. It has to be where people walk with you. You could be the lead bird, or you could even have people walk with you in a straight line, but you're making that direction. How did I know this was going to happen? Well, maybe during athletics, I chose to be a goalie of the hockey team when no one else wanted to do it, and I was willing to take the responsibility of saving that last shot so we don't lose games. Breakaway shots, you name it. Yeah, I'll take it. I'll be that guy. You score the goals, I'll stop the goals. It's just as important. You know, if I can shut them out, we win. And then in high school, which was kind of fun, I had traveling parents. I had a big empty house, so I had a ton of parties. The fact that we never trashed the house, I never got arrested, or we didn't get in trouble, must have done something right there. I had 100 people trashing my house for 3 or 4 years. And so, and also, when you're willing to do an internship for a company and work for free, they need to see value in you if they're not even paying you. And so I needed to see while I was in my early 20s, you know, before graduation, do I have what it takes to get hired? And it was almost like a free test. And I did well. I was really embraced. And so you have to put yourself out there. And sometimes you need to find your own opportunities. And so, and when it came to leadership, I guess I just gravitated towards people that were friendly, that paid it forward, that weren't jerks, that didn't have such a, I mean, you could be confident, but didn't have such an ego where they wouldn't speak to somebody or know somebody's name. In fact, when I was working with Telemundo, Pedro Sevsek and Miguel Quintana used to come into town from Florida and California to visit the Tucson television station. And when we would go around locally, oh, the heroes welcomes they would get from the Latino community, and they would stop and hug and take pictures and talk. And I learned something. These people are rich and famous. They're amazing. And they knew 100 different things about people's lives because they can relate so well. And I loved that. They were so embraced. And I wanted to be like that. I wanted to be one with the people so bad. And you know, maybe leadership is the first one that stands up or makes the suggestion or has $5 for gasoline to get you to the beach. Yeah, everyone else can enjoy it. You know, let me at least pay for it. Sometimes people have to make the power moves so other people can learn from it and then contribute. And so I was fortunate to grow up with a lot of people that were very confident and did certain things that enriched their lives. And so I learned a lot from that as well.
And so how do you translate that in your work today? If you tell us a bit more about your call center, do you do take call on behalf of your customers, or do you do some outbound call in sales, or both?
Great question. We do everything. I do outbound sales, lead generation, appointment setting. We do back office support, customer support, and non-voice support. And so we look for specific profiles of the agents to make sure they're the right fit. We have certain qualification processes to make sure they can do the job. And prior to even taking the account, I just want to make sure through pre-launch checklists and a couple phone calls that we're a right fit. The last thing I want to do is twist an arm and overpromise and underdeliver. That's not good. Like, we don't have Chinese speakers at my call center. I'm not 24/7. I can't match the rates of India. So I respectfully have to decline more potential clients than I can accept because there is a lot of competition. But I tell you what, if I'm able to offset $1 or $2 an hour by the soft skills and the environment that I have here, then it does make sense to work with my call center. But, you know, it's a very lucrative industry, and the clients are exceptionally demanding. I mentioned campaigns we don't do. It's sports books, casinos, and stocks. I got to make sure these are long-term projects. But I tell you, if I can bring specific types of people in here and get them to acclimate, not just making phone calls, but the sort of rebuttals that we have and the structure, they can make a wonderful living. In fact, it pays more than doctors and attorneys here if you get on a very good project. So some extremely talented speakers are making a ton of money in Costa Rica.
Very good. Very good. So I want to get into a bit more technical, and some of our audience will be interested when it comes to selling. Sale is something that people can have some bad image for people who are not salespeople, or we have this idea of a salesperson, especially coming from a call center. We all have been on the end of a cold call coming up, and unexpected. How do you do with your team to make sure that they are not first they are disturbing people, and people take their call? What's the success rate, and what advice would you give our audience about cold calling and reaching out to new prospective customers?
Make sure whatever you're representing is ethical and not illegal, because people hate making phone calls if they're doing something they're not comfortable with. But if I'm calling in regards to puppies and ice cream, I can do that all day long. That's nice calls. And secondly, I request from the client to make sure that the list is scrubbed, so we're not calling people on a do not call list. They maybe have opted in to receive a phone call or information. Those are better leads. And if the leads are completed, it allows me a chance to do some due diligence prior to the call, so it's not just a random cold call. Plus, when you're making an outbound prospecting call, that's an excellent topic to bring up, Max. I believe in the first 30 seconds you should land the intro, because the body and a conclusion don't even exist. Let me explain. Your first impression should be a company name spike. You should ask Max Yao Leadership Podcast, how are you today? I should say that first. Why? I have my anonymity. Not for the whole call, that's shady. But for the first impression, I'm going to say the name of your company better than you do. Okay? So instead of just asking for Max or who's in charge, how about this? When you get the "we're not interested, thanks, don't call again, is this a sales call?" That means you did it wrong. You put a bad taste in their mouth and they're black and blue. But if I can throw them off a little bit by just mentioning the name of your company, it might reduce their defense from maybe a 10 to a 6. So then you ask me a question. Who is this? Not, is this a sales call? Who is this, right? And I use a buffer boomerang technique. I will buffer it by saying, Max, that's an excellent question. My name is Richard Blank. So I name drop you, let you know it's a great question, repeat the question, and send it back in a positive way to readjust the tone. I'm not going to say the name of my company yet. I'm testing it for a second positive reinforcement from you. Then you're going to say, well, who is Richard Blank? What company are you with? Ah, Max, I knew you were going to mention that. The name of my company is Costa Rica Call Center. And you play your odds. At least what I have done is got one or two hands on that rock. I did a company name spike, 2 buffer boomerangs, and let's just say, Max, you're going to transfer me to the owner of the company. I'm going to do a positive escalation. I'm going to go, Max, you were great today. I'm just going to let Mr. Jones know that when we get transferred. And then when the owner of the company picks up, hey, this is Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones, you know how great Max is. He's going, yeah, that's my son. Yeah, he's been with me for 20 years. So imagine starting off a conversation like that. You got to pass the pitch. You give a positive escalation of an individual that works with them. That's how you get through gatekeepers. Not every time, but you show respect. So when you call that company back, they remember you out of the thousands of calls, plus you separate yourself from people that do not mention these things. And my man, this is prior to any sort of pitching. You've showed such good faith. You've made a friend along the way. You complimented somebody. And so if you're going to snap somebody out of this trance of telemarketing and we're good, thanks, at least you bought yourself another 30 seconds. These are 30-second clips. It's not a 10-minute call, Max. It's 20, 30-second calls. You have checkpoints to ensure that you have a confirmation to move forward. If not, stop the horizontal, go to the vertical, and continue asking open-ended questions till it makes sense or sounds good. And may we move forward, because most people will jump over certain topics or not get a confirmation, and they wonder why they didn't get a sale, didn't get an appointment. Hey, I'd rather have you give me a solid 3 minutes than a crappy 10 minutes that doesn't turn into an appointment. I want a romantic death. I want you to play a perfect hand. I want you to pay attention. So you can use transitional sentences and tie downs and being in the moment. And so just by even using the military alphabet with some people, it allows me to not have emails bounce back. And in the United States, a lot of people have served. So instead of finishing a call, you have 2 more minutes of encore, of talking about the military service and things like that. And so it's not a trick. These are just proven skills that the military and individuals have done in order, while bombs are going off or distractions, they can get Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, Foxtrot. I mean, that's how it works. People love that sort of thing. And so as long as I can add in these different sort of soft skills to their repertoire, they're consistent. And it's not a 1 in a million. These are things you're using every single time. And so the more that you do a due diligence before a phone call, the more you relax and use the name Betty or Judy and you compliment them. And don't be surprised if you're making, instead of 100 calls a day, about 80 phone calls a day. Your talk time goes from 3 minutes to 7 minutes. And you're building a serious pipeline of amazing business. And so that's how you do it the old school way.
That's very interesting. And so when you have those conversations with prospects, how are you able to tell early in the conversation whether this lead is likely to be warm, or because you work on the time of your team, and so you want also to make sure that that conversation is going to pay dividend. How do you assess that to maximize your time, really?
Well, naturally, there's qualifying questions. If they're the decision maker, if there's a certain budget, what's their time frame? Have they done this before? Is it something brand new? It really depends on the vertical. But, you know, if someone's just yesing an answer to you and not giving you a description, maybe they're just ingratiating you, wanting you off the phone, and you'll never get that appointment again. But, you know, there are certain tell signs on a call, especially if someone's asking follow-up questions to you for clarification. That shows interest levels. And as I mentioned before, separating yourself from other telemarketers by showing real sincere interest of a company or a person prior to pitching what you do, because you're taking your chances with contracts and pricing. If anything and nothing, even after a conversation where somebody is not qualified because either they don't have enough leads to call or it's not really a fit for their business, one of the best things you can get is a compliment of time. Hey, Max, even though we're 2 ships passing in the night, you need lobster, I sell steak. Really nice meeting you. You sound like the nicest guy. And I tell you what, if I ever want that lobster, I'm definitely calling you. And I got 5 friends that might want lobster. So don't be surprised if you're not going to get a couple phone calls from not the guy you sold, but the guy, his golfing buddies. You get the recommendation. Isn't that amazing? It's like the free slice of pizza without expecting anything in return. You're so confident in your consulting and your pizza that you're willing to give it away. Why? So they get a real taste of it. And that's how you sell, because it's, what, $1 million free consulting? I guess. Or maybe it's just a way to pay it forward to someone that took the time to listen and to give it a shot. And so you just still want to keep it pure. You don't want to force that fit or say, oh, why aren't you doing business with me today? Or what can I do in order to earn your business? Okay, you can use those sort of things, but you can also have somebody telling you the plan and seeing where you can fill in the blanks and make it a good fit.
Very good. So a lot of people listening today are probably not telemarketers, but I believe there are lessons from your 2 decades in the industry that can be applicable to all the leaders listening today. What are 3 lessons that you could share with us from telemarketing that could apply to anyone listening today?
Of course. The first thing is, don't be too hard on yourself. You're choosing one of the most difficult and challenging industries out there with huge rejection rates. So it's really just about that taste that you get every now and again to give you that sort of energy to keep going. So Just do not compromise your ethics for $1. That's number one. Number two, dedicated practice. You're only going to get better if you do self-analysis. Fortunately, in my industry, we have the technology. And so what we do, we're conversing an active social call center. So I have thousands upon thousands of phone calls from an agent that they can listen to. And it's not me, it's you. You get to hear your timing and your rebuttals and your tone. And so I think we have the luxury of having this sort of resource in order for self-improvement. And then the third thing, you're choosing a means to an end. Today, people are surprised. How many texts do you get a day? 1,000. How many emails do you get a day? 100. How many phone calls do you get a day? None. Okay. It'll be that phone call. Do it the old school way. People aren't expecting it. There's no misinterpretation. You can really, it's like a home-cooked meal. By limiting us, the electromagnetic energy transfer through speech, through time, through energy, you are greatly reducing that long-term relationship with somebody. You can be clever in writing or use these AI tools, but you might say something to somebody one time that will stick with them for the rest of their life. And it could be positive, it could be negative. But you should be tapping into all of those senses. And for me, I believe that through this interpersonal verbal communication, it's the best form. And even though my industry might be getting smaller because of AI, and some people have a bad taste in their mouth or look at it in a certain way, I still believe that if you take your time to be an effective speaker, forget what you do for a living. You'll save a marriage, you'll get more friends, you could be the arbitrator, you could be that, as you say, leader. Maybe if I'm the only person that can put a sentence together, you might have me be the speaker. I don't know what to say. Maybe just by default, Max, that you've done things that are so core, that are so natural, that's really our base, that people realize it's not fake. And they want the authentic person to speak for them, my friend. Yes.
Absolutely. Well, that's quite powerful. You mentioned that you work in an industry with high rate of rejection.
Oh, yeah.
What would you share with us in terms of how to handle rejection?
Well, when someone says F you to you on the phone, you might want to quit. And let's just say you're under a lot of pressure to hit certain numbers. You're going to start being desperate on the phone and stretching. It's not for the faint of heart. Most people hate it. But I tell you what, why do you think Hollywood glamorizes The Wolf of Wall Street and Glengarry and Boiler Room? Because they realize that people have mastered the art of rhetoric and delivery can make a fortune. It's like fire. I could use it for health and for warmth, but I can burn somebody with it. Eminem on his 8 Mile with these rappers having these rap battles, they go back and forth ripping on each other, and the better rhetoric gets you. Or the soaring rhetoric to show how successful you've been. So words move people, and especially if it goes through somebody from experience. It's the craziest thing. I have a weird luxury trade, and I can't believe I made a living off of it. But I tell you what, there's nothing wrong with studying rhetoric and using advanced vocabulary like through a thesaurus, because I don't like when people use the word help. I prefer to switch it out with guide, assist, lend a hand. Not excuse me, Max, for my clarification. You can fall on certain swords. And we're just adjusting. That's all. And we're using proven sentence structure that have worked in the past to show diplomacy and strategy. Is it manipulation? What, do you want me to curse? And use slang or something you don't even understand because it's just the latest term? Okay. Or I could use something that had been written about, used multiple times, and offended the least amount of people. I'm allowed to borrow rhetoric. I didn't say it's unique or my own. But I tell you what, I gravitated towards speakers, and I'm going to date myself a little bit. But when I was really taking this craft seriously, I couldn't hit the psychological or scientific study books. I did that in college, and it's interesting, these focus group and controlled studies. But I wanted to really study the speaker. So I went old school. I studied Basil Rathbone from the 30s and 40s. He did Sherlock Holmes with Nigel Bruce. And I thought I couldn't imitate him because it would seem inauthentic. Oh, but the rhetorical delivery, the vocabulary, half the time I was pausing and looking up words and practicing. And then I enjoyed a show called The A-Team in the 80s with Dirk Benedict, who played Templeton Peck. And I always thought his style was great. And then there was a show called Remington Steele with Pierce Brosnan and Stephanie Zimbalist. And so, yeah, I like Mr. T throwing people through windows, but the Face Man was cool too. And Remington Steele was suave and debonair. And I'm watching these things and I realize this is very interesting. Maybe if I incorporate some of this style and strategy, it might make me more marketable, more approachable. And look at me now, wearing the three-piecer on your podcast. Why? Why not? To show respect to Max and his audience. Why not? And I hope I explained it to you in a kind of a roundabout way.
Yeah, no, that's clear. So in practical terms, if I go through some application for a job, or I try to get a client to buy a product and I get rejected, what would be your advice for me in that situation?
A, listen to your phone call. Did you miss the tell signs? B, do you know your product well enough? Are you hedging, doing ums, ahs, looking things up? Are you missing certain areas to anchor, where if they're asking you the question, are you able to answer that? Or if you don't know it, to write it down, repeat it, and make sure you get back in touch with them. And so, as I mentioned, these are certain steps. How about this? It's the best to learn from. It's okay, and I don't see it as a rejection because your intentions were honorable. You went into it with good faith. And Max, sometimes you're going to catch people on a bad day, or they just got off a terrible phone call and then all of a sudden you're calling. And so what I try to do, and I mentioned before, if anything and nothing, have a romantic death. Regardless of if they're not buying from you, did you pitch it well, wherever it went, I need to make sure that your first 30 seconds was money. I want to be so proud of you by saying the name of the company well, by giving a positive escalation to the gatekeeper, by introducing yourself, by tapping your chest and saying, yes, Judy, my name is Max Yao. Yeah, my man, I'm proud of you. It's almost like the Norwegian berserker warriors. You strip all your armor off and you just go with a sword pretty much naked in the snow running at somebody. You don't want to have any weight on you. You want to make the first 30 seconds as pure as possible. It's got to be pure. And that's what's going to give you the time for the other 30 seconds to take another breath and continue. That's where I'm proud of you. And I tell you what, regardless of the outcome, if they say your name, not in the introduction or the conclusion, but in the body of the call, if the guy goes, Max, that's a great question, or Max, I'm so happy, that's where I give you the most points on the QA. Why? You connected. You did it. You did it. And if you focus on that, where they say your name in the middle, now you have a real call. That's the area of focus for my agent. So it reduces so much stress on any other area or having them distracted by looking ahead.
No, that's powerful. Thank you for sharing that. And Richard, as we progress toward the end of our conversation today, we have a tradition where we ask our guests to share 3 book recommendations with the audience. What would be 3 books that you recommend us and why?
Well, I guess the first book would be the longest book I ever read when I was 21. It was called Anthony Adverse by Harvey Allen back in 1938. It's 1,234 pages. I mean, it was given to me as a gift, so I read it. So I got to recommend that. Maybe another book is The Giving
Well, what
Tree.
is it about? Do you tell us a bit more about that book in particular?
Anthony Adverse, well, he was given up by his mom to an orphanage and actually a convent, and was raised by father and some nuns, and just really in the 18th century had a yearning for adventure and wanted to live life. And so what happened is he traveled around the world to Africa, the United States, parts of Europe during certain wars. But this is a man that fell in love, that lived life. And when you read a book that's over 1,000 pages, you really read somebody's life. And I liked it because it was before technology. So a lot of it was self-reliance and relationship building. It was core, it was deep, and a little bit of swashbuckling as well. People were using swords back then, so I was like, yeah, that's pretty cool. Why did I read it? As I mentioned before, it was given to me by a good friend. I was in Europe at the time, studying abroad, had some time on the trains to do it. And I guess when you make a commitment, you follow through. I don't think I'd ever read a long book like that again, but it was just one of those things, can I make a distance and have a commitment at that age? And so, and the movie is pretty good too. It was all right. And the second book would be The Giving Tree. And I forget who the author was, but it was a book when I was growing up and talking about a child growing up with this tree that would give them everything, from the apples to the branches to shade and a place to rest. And I think he cut it down and made a canoe. But it's just really about someone giving everything to another, and that person appreciating it and just having a lifetime relationship with someone. Not where you keep score or it's a tit for tat, but if you're capable through kind words, a hug, even financial support if you're able, those are sort of the lifelong relationships where you're a giving tree on something like that. And that was a very interesting book that I read.
Would you have a third book recommendation for us?
And then a final book recommendation. How about this, my man? Write your own book. Not saying it in a bad way, but I think that your life should be such an adventure and so amazing that you write your own book. And maybe if I'm going to recommend a book, maybe some of the children's books that I'll be writing when I retire. I think the third book should be your book. It should be proud.
Very good. No, indeed, I think journaling is one thing that has made a tremendous impact on me. Like writing things, and then started to write articles myself as well. So I encourage everyone listening today, just pick up the habit of writing, and then trust that your voice is worth to be heard, and put it out there. Whether it's an article or a book, as you just mentioned, Richard. Yeah, I agree absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
And one of the final question I'll have for you is, we've spent the last hour together. I asked you a few questions. What is one question that you wish I'd asked you, and how would you have answered?
I guess, what is the moment in your life that everything changed? And for me, it was when I sat down with my parents at 18 years old, and I convinced them that I was following in my great-grandparents' footsteps. He came from Eastern Europe at the turn of the 20th, learned English, made our money during the Depression. It's in my blood. Skipped a couple generations, but I'm going south. And allow me to live a poet's life. Allow me to have a true life. And at 18 years old, making that sort of long play decision, it's kind of crazy. It's kind of risky. It's madness. But looking back at it now, I couldn't be more proud of myself for standing strong and tall and following through on a commitment that I gave myself back in 1991 to continue this and not stop. And so I think that most entrepreneurs might quit 10, 20, 30, even 80% in. It's that crazy remaining 20% that gets you to that finish line. And I don't know how to explain it any other way, but the moment that you want to quit, give it one more day. The moment you want to stop, get back up. Call a good friend. Hit the gym. Wash your car. Make a bed. If anything and nothing, start from scratch. Do some sort of thing where you feel good about yourself, and then you can focus on others. And so sometimes you need to regress in order to move forward. And I guess that would be my final thought for you and your awesome audience today.
That's so powerful, and I agree that it's a question that we should ask ourselves often. For me, and there are obviously many moments in my life where I could see things changed, but I like to believe that for most people and for most of us, you can trace it to when you were between 8 and 10 years old. Some events along those years that has a great impact. And mine was around, I was probably 9 years old, and I think I was a different person before and after that moment where I was this young boy. Everything was accepted to me, passed on me. I could do anything and everything, and then I thought I could have everything that I want. And it was back in the Ivory Coast. I had to sit this exam to go from primary school to secondary school, and right. I failed the entry exam. Right, so my dad wanted to take me into private school, and then where even if you have failed, you can still continue. And then my mom said no, you have to repeat the class. And I'm like, what? And the funny thing is, back then, when you're in primary school, you wore shorts, and when you are in the secondary school, you have trousers. So I had to repeat another year working shorts, where my classmates had moved to the school next door wearing trousers, and I would see them coming back at the end of a school day in the trousers to say hello to our teachers, and I was sitting in the classroom in my shorts, and I was like, that will never happen to me again, never again. And from then on, my schoolwork completely changed, and my work ethic changed, and I think that was one critical moment, of reckoning for me at that age. So, Richard, thank you very much for these for your time here. And how would anyone wanted to reach out to you, get in touch with you? Where can we find you?
I know most people don't like telemarketers, but if they want to talk to me, they can check me out on my Facebook fan page. We have about 139,000 members, and when this goes live, you'll have even more fans here in Central America. But, real quick for your audience, Costa Rica, we're north of Panama, south of Nicaragua. We're the only democratic society in Central America. There's no standing army. They put all that money back into education. There's a 95% literacy rate with a neutral English accent. Good infrastructure, and companies such as Amazon, HP, Intel, and Oracle are here. Close to the United States, known for ecotourism and medical tourism. And so you can find me there, or check us out on CostaRicasCallCenter.com. And I tell you what, Max, thank you so much for having me as a guest. I love your company. You're my main man. And I hope I was able to share some insights today of my industry with you and your audience.
Absolutely. It was really powerful. Thank you very much, Richard. And look forward to keeping in touch and continue to see your great success there in Costa Rica.
You got it, buddy.
This was the Max Yao Leadership Podcast. Thank you for joining us. To listen to future episodes, you can subscribe on Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows. Until next time, keep being the leader everybody trusts and respects.